There are films that make you laugh. You think they'll be light, fun, harmless. But without realizing it, the smile fades, and suddenly you're face to face with pure pain and drama. Stories that begin as a game and end up tearing you apart inside. Because cinema, the more it hurts, the more truth it holds. If you love movies as much as I do, subscribe, leave a like, and follow me on social media. Get ready, because you're about to watch a smile turn into tears.
You realize if this ever leaked out...
It won't! Believe me, it never again.
At first, The Apartment seems like a charming comedy. An ordinary man lends his place to his bosses so they can take their lovers there, while he dreams of a promotion and of falling in love. Everything is full of irony, rhythm, and that elegant Billy Wilder humor that makes life feel like a light, absurd game. The situations are comic, the characters endearing, and for a while you believe everything will turn out fine. But little by little, the laughter dies down. Beneath the humor's facade, you glimpse the loneliness, sadness, and humiliation of a man who begins to realize what he's sacrificing just to belong to an empty system. And the girl he dreamed of is broken too. Suddenly, the comedy becomes a mirror, a story about dignity, love, and the price of selling your soul for a promotion. In the end, The Apartment doesn't make you laugh. It leaves a lump in your throat. Because what started as an office game ends up as one of the most human and painful stories in cinema.
And I would like that one. No, down. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Little Miss Sunshine starts out as a madcap comedy. A completely dysfunctional family decides to drive more than 1,000 kilometers so little Olive can enter a children's beauty pageant. They all pile into a beat-up yellow van that barely starts. The drug-addicted grandpa, the father obsessed with success, the mother trying to hold it all together, the depressed uncle who just attempted suicide, and the brother who's taken a vow of silence. The result is pure chaos. Arguments, absurd situations, accidents. You laugh because it all seems like a satire of American failure. But gradually, the comedy starts to hurt. Each character carries an open wound. The trip stops being an adventure and becomes a kind of purgatory, a search for meaning by people who expect nothing from life. And when they finally reach the pageant, that superficial, cruel world becomes a perfect mirror of their shared defeat. Yet, in the middle of the ridicule, something real appears. Unity, tenderness, dignity. For the first time, they're all on the same side. And that ridiculous final routine, which ought to be humiliating, turns into an act of love and resistance. The Truman Show begins like every Jim Carrey comedy. Truman Burbank lives in a perfect town where everyone smiles. The sun always shines and nothing seems to go wrong. His life is so ideal, it feels like a commercial from the 1950s. And that's exactly what it is. In the first half, the film plays with irony. The absurd conversations, the mechanical gestures, products pitched straight to camera. We laugh at that plastic world without realizing we're laughing at ourselves. But little by little, the laughter stops. Truman starts to suspect. He starts to look at the sky, the sea, the looks on other people's faces. And what was a light comedy becomes an existential nightmare. The man who had everything realizes his entire life is a lie. The tone changes. No more cheerful music or perfect shots. Only the desperation of a human being trying to touch the truth. When he finally reaches the edge of the set, the literal limit of his world, there's no melodrama. Just silence, courage, and a door open to the unknown. And in that instant, The Truman Show stops being a comedy about television and becomes one of the most luminous films ever made about freedom.
Tried it and they ended up with lint in their mouth. This is an Italian belly button, kids, and it's part of our heritage.
Life is Beautiful looks like an Italian romantic comedy. It even seems to whitewash the Holocaust. Guido dances between clumsiness and charm, conquers life with humor, and turns every mistake into a laugh. Everything is bright, innocent, almost childlike. But suddenly the laughter freezes. The warmth goes out, and that love story becomes a nightmare. Yet Guido doesn't give up. His humor, once naive, becomes heroic. In the midst of horror, he decides his son will not know fear. That even as the world collapses, he will keep pretending life is still a game. What began as a romantic tale transforms into a parable about the power of love and imagination. Every gesture of Guido's is a form of resistance, Every smile, a wall against despair. Benigni turns laughter into courage, tenderness into sacrifice, and pain into a kind of hope. And when the ending comes, you understand that few films have shown a beauty as brutal and pure. That of a man who, facing the abyss, chose to keep inventing the illusion of a sky, just so his child would believe it still existed. For the first half, Parasite feels like a near-perfect dark comedy. A clever, ruthless poor family slowly infiltrates the life of a rich family. Everything is told with humor, rhythm, and elegance. It seems like a brilliant game of deceit, where cheek passes for intelligence. But as it goes on, the tone shifts. The laughter tightens. Comfort turns into threat. Bong Joon-ho plays with you. He makes you enjoy the con until you realize you fell for it too. The characters, every one of them, rich and poor, reveal themselves as fragile, selfish, blind. No one is spared. What began as a farce turns into a nightmare. Luxury, success, hunger, and ambition mingle until you no longer know who's parasitizing whom. And when everything explodes, there's no justice or redemption, only chaos. Parasite is the most uncomfortable comedy of the last decade. A laugh that ends with blood on your hands. A brutal reminder that beneath the gloss of humor and style, laughter always has a price. And here we all pay it. For the first 2 hours, The Wolf of Wall Street is sheer madness. A circus of money, drugs, sex, and euphoria. It seems like a wild comedy about the American dream taken to the extreme. Jordan Belfort lives without limits, without guilt, without breaks, and Scorsese makes you laugh at it, with his irony, his rhythm, his contagious energy. He drags you into that world until you almost find it fun. But little by little, without noticing, the roar of laughter starts to hurt. Because excess stops being luxury and becomes addiction. What was once celebration turns into ruin and desolation, and the humor becomes a mirror. You realize that all that glitter only hid a void. Scorsese films the fall with the same velocity as the rise, so you feel the vertigo, the fatigue, the loss of control. He doesn't change the tone, but the viewer catches on. Jordan, the man who had everything, ends up screaming into the silence, surrounded by toys, women, bank accounts, but no soul. And when the money and the laughter go out, there's only a lost guy wondering when exactly he confused success with life. The Wolf of Wall Street begins as a spectacle and ends as a moral tragedy. A comedy that laughs at you until you realize you're laughing at your own corruption. And what looks like redemption at the end is really a man who never wanted to face his emptiness and was applauded for it. In its first few minutes, American Beauty seems like a witty satire of suburban life. An ordinary man, bored with his job, his marriage, and his routine, decides to set himself free. Smoke weed, fantasize about a girl, rebel against the system. It all sounds ironic, even light. The film laughs at that very American mediocrity, perfect neighbors, fake smiles, prefab happiness. But behind the comedy lies an uncomfortable truth. Everyone is broken. They look for love and find only empty reflections. Desire, success, appearances. All begin to rot from within. And when the emotional turn arrives, the tone changes completely. Lester, the protagonist, discovers, just before losing it all, that the beauty he sought was there all along. In the everyday, in his daughter, in a simple bag floating in the wind. That revelation turns what seemed like a midlife crisis story into something much bigger, a meditation on modern life and the loss of innocence. American Beauty starts as a sardonic comedy and ends as a luminous elegy, a film that, between laughter and desire, shows you that beauty appears only when you stop trying to possess it. During its first hour, The Great Beauty feels like an endless party. Rome, glowing at night, overflowing with art, music, and beautiful empty bodies. Jep Gambardella, a writer who once believed in truth and now only seeks distraction, wanders through that world with a tired smile. The film laughs with him at the banality, the hollow intellectuals, the obsession with seeming profound in a city that has already seen everything. It's brilliant, funny, sensual, but beneath all that elegance, you can feel the emptiness. A different emptiness than in films about ambition or excess. Here, it's the emptiness of someone who has had everything and lost the ability to be amazed. And little by little, without you realizing it, the tone shifts. Amid the ruins, Jep begins to glimpse traces of truth. An absurd performance, an old nun, a woman he truly loved. The humor fades, the party stops, and Sorrentino turns irony into prayer. The man who laughed at everything begins to cry over nothing because he understands that beauty is not in grandeur, but in what we had forgotten to see. The Great Beauty begins as a satire of luxury and ends as a requiem for the modern soul, a comedy about emptiness that becomes a confession about the need to feel again. Boogie Nights dismantles the dream of porn and sexual liberation. The film follows Dirk Diggler, a young rising star in adult cinema who enters the world of nightlife, parties, and no-string sex. Paul Thomas Anderson films the 70s porn industry with an almost contagious innocence. Every character is seeking love, family, a place to belong. And for a while, they find it. The tone is warm, optimistic, almost comic. It even seems to whitewash the industry. But then the 80s arrive. The party is no longer enough. Now the characters need cocaine. Desire becomes addiction, and what once felt like community turns into loneliness. The laughs vanish, the colors darken, and the camera stops dancing. It observes. That's Anderson's genius. He doesn't change the style, he changes the soul. Suddenly, everything that seemed fun becomes unbearable. The friend who bought into the tale of sexual freedom ends up killing his wife, and then himself. Others lose themselves in cocaine or despair. Overdoses, unhappiness, emptiness. And in the end, there's only a broken man trying to look at himself in the mirror, repeating over and over a line he no longer believes. I'm a star. Clinging to the one thing that gave him meaning, and that also destroyed him. Boogie Nights begins in euphoria and ends as a moral tragedy about lost innocence, family, and the lie of porn, sexual freedom, and soulless hedonism.
Oh my God!
From the first minute, Goodfellas drags you into a world where everything sparkles. Easy money, sharp suits, fancy restaurants, the feeling of power. Scorsese films the mafia with such electric energy, it almost plays like a comedy. The characters laugh, dance, eat, live on the edge. The camera soars with them. The music never stops. The adrenaline is pure. And for a while, you go with it. You want to be one of them. Because, like Henry Hill, you think you're invincible. But without you noticing, the comedy begins to rot. The pace doesn't slow. It accelerates, distorts, turns suffocating. Euphoria becomes delirium. The parties stop being pleasurable and turn into orgies of cocaine, shouting, paranoia. Friends kill each other. The laughter dies. Fear floods everything. Trust disappears. Money burns. The camera stops floating and starts to shake. And what at first felt like a celebration of criminal life becomes a plunge into the hell of ego, addiction, and ruin. Scorsese doesn't change the tone. He rips it away. You slide from comedy to chaos without noticing, because there are no clumsy underlines. You realize all that spectacle, all that glory, was only an illusion propped up by violence and coke. Power curdles into fear, ambition into emptiness, and Henry Hill, who had it all, ends up alone, hiding, eating reheated pasta, dreaming of a past that was his own punishment. Goodfellas starts as a party and ends as a funeral, a frenetic comedy that bleeds out into pure tragedy. A masterpiece about corruption, addiction, and the fall. Scorsese makes you revel in hell so that, in the end, you understand there's nothing sadder than an empty laugh. You've now seen the price of living without a soul, of papering over the void. So subscribe, leave a like, and comment on which one I missed. If you love cinema like I do, follow me on my socials. See you very soon.